This bill is based on the most fundamental democratic principle, the right of self-determination. Puerto Rico has been a U.S. territory for over 100 years, yet during that time, Congress has never bothered to determine whether Puerto Ricans are actually satisfied with the status quo.
Is a fair and appropriate way for the people of Puerto Rico to express themselves at the ballot box regarding the critical issue of their permanent status.
For you see, I was born in the territory of Puerto Rico, and by being a resident of New York and having been raised in New York, I'm able to be a member of Congress. Not a resident commissioner, with all due respect to my brother, but a full voting member of Congress. And so I come fully understanding how it is to be able to look at yourself and to wonder what, if ever, will be resolved when it comes to the status of Puerto Rico.
This legislation is as fair as you can possibly expect, and I would hope that this House would respond by passing this legislation and sending the message to the people of Puerto Rico that Congress would welcome.
This process is absolutely respectful of the Puerto Rican people's right to decide their future status.
First, a little history lesson. The American flag has flown over Puerto Rico for more than a century. It's been a U.S. territory since 1898. People of Puerto Rico have been citizens of the United States since 1917. Citizens born in Puerto Rico are natural-born U.S. citizens. Bound by federal law, they pay federal payroll taxes, or even eligible to be elected president. American citizens from Puerto Rico have been drafted into military service during World War II and every war ever since. 5 Medal of Honor winners from Puerto Rico, 65,034 Puerto Ricans served in World War II alone. It's been an enormous contribution to the life of this nation by these American citizens.
Puerto Rico also joined the American family as a result of war. In 1898, during the Spanish-American War, the island was invaded by the United States and was ceded by Spain to our country under the Treaty of Paris. The island's century-long history within the American family has been significant. Puerto Rico was one of the first areas outside the continental United States where the American flag was raised. To the United States, it marked a milestone in our own political development. When once our Union of States was comprised of renegade English colonies, we then stepped into a role that we previously had fought against. Given our own experience, would anyone have imagined that our new colony would be disenfranchised and kept unequal in our own political framework? Our commitment to Puerto Rico's advancement under the 1898 Treaty of Paris should be our judge. If our measure of success is today's Puerto Rico, then I say Puerto Rico has done well by the United States. It is a showcase of democracy in the Caribbean. Having some of the highest voter turnout rates in our nation, Puerto Rico shames many of our own states with its energy and enthusiasm in electing its leaders. Economically, it is a powerhouse in the Caribbean and considered a home away from home for many mainland Fortune 500 companies. Equal in importance to Puerto Rico's political and economic prowess is the island's contributions to our own social fabric. Every aspect of American art, music, theater, and sport has been influenced by Puerto Rico's own culture and its people. And beyond such contributions, there remains Puerto Rico's patriotism, beginning in World War I, when thousands of Puerto Ricans served in the U.S. military.
This is a very significant moment and a very significant bill.
Through a fair, neutral, as well as federally recognized plebiscite.
Puerto Ricans have a rich history of service to our nation. They've served honorably in our military as federal officials and ambassadors, and our newest member of the Supreme Court, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, is of Puerto Rican descent. But in all this time, the people of Puerto Rico have never been given the chance to express their views about the island's political relationship with the United States in a meaningful vote sponsored by Congress.
If the people of Puerto Rico ultimately vote to request admission, there will be no stronger defender of their right to be the 51st American state than me.
As the delegate from Guam, I understand the desire of residents in the territories to decide their future and make a determination about their political future.
For the first time in 112 years,
This legislation is a self-determination vehicle.
will ask the 4 million American citizens in Puerto Rico
an attempt to get an idea of how the people of Puerto Rico feel about this very important issue. They are American citizens.
What is fair? Since 1898, residents of Puerto Rico have been deprived of full and equal political representation. Though its residents are American citizens, the island is not a state, and its residents have no equal voting representation in Congress.
And I support self-determination. I support democracy everywhere.
So some of the advantages that might be attained were they a state. Their resident commissioner, Pedro Pierluisi, did an excellent job trying to advocate for the interests of Puerto Rico in this healthcare debate, but he was but one vote. The people of Puerto Rico, counted and apportioned under a census, should have 6 members of Congress.
This day has been long in the making. With a population of nearly 4 million people, the people of Puerto Rico deserve the opportunity to decide their fate. Puerto Rico has been under the U.S. flag for 111 years, and its residents have been U.S. citizens for more than 90 years. Since the extension of U.S. citizenship to its residents in 1917, Puerto Rico has maintained one of the highest per capita rates of participation in the U.S. Armed Forces.
They're dying for this country. More have died percentage-wise in conflicts than any state in the Union.
I think it's inappropriate for those that do not represent those people to speak out against this legislation. I think it's wrong not to recognize that this is long overdue. 112 years ago, Puerto Rico became Puerto Rico. They were supposed to be a state, and I am the only member of this House that's gone through the statehood battle.
So these people coming down here from New York and every place else, they don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. The people, no, I will not yield.
No, I'm not asking that, but the people in the gallery should not be applauding.
The people who want to have this determination made are the people of Puerto Rico, and their elected representatives all together say, let's have this bill passed. And yet people from New York and from Washington, I mean, I don't know how close the state of Washington is to Puerto Rico, but it's about 4,000 miles, maybe 5,000. And New York's quite a ways away. Why don't we listen to what the elected representatives of Puerto Rico want? And it's the Democrat and Republican. This is not a partisan issue. So my view is, let's let them have the plebiscite. Let's come up with a process that will work. We've tried this before and it's been split up all over the place. This process will work. It will boil it down to what the people of Puerto Rico really want. And I believe they want statehood, and we ought to let them determine that. If their representatives want it, if their governor wants it, if everybody else wants it, and if they're sacrificing their lives for this country, then by gosh, we ought to give them a chance to be a state. I yield back to Bounty.
It's about time. Let's put the question to the people of Puerto Rico.
At the same time, the opponents tell you there's no majority support for statehood in Puerto Rico, but they'll be forced to vote for statehood. I don't understand that. If there's no support, then they won't vote for statehood. That's a fact. Now,
Congress needs to give the people of Puerto Rico access to participatory democracy, and this legislation does exactly that. It will create a process for the citizens of Puerto Rico to decide their own political status.
The only time that you can really know that Puerto Ricans are treated as Americans are treated is when they are drafted or when they volunteer to serve this great country of ours. And when it ends up, you will find that per capita, more people have been died and wounded defending our flag from Puerto Rico than any state or any territory. So it just seems to me that something has to be done. It is so truly unfair to respect our flag and respect our citizens and to tell them that they can fight a war where they can't even vote for the president. And quite frankly, as far as the status is concerned, it has hurt me as an American that this has consumed the island. And for the first time in a couple of months, I've heard about free association. I have more Puerto Ricans in my district in New York than probably in San Juan. I've never heard anyone talk about free association.
Briefly, some of the Commonwealth people, with all due respect to them, have proposed a new Commonwealth, but they've never presented it in legislative form. They've had years, the 20 years I've been here, they've never presented the Commonwealth in a legislative form.
Individuals born in Puerto Rico have been U.S. citizens, but Puerto Rico itself has been a Commonwealth. And as neither state nor an independent political entity, it has, as Ronald Reagan once said, an unnatural status. It is part of our country, but not entirely. Separate from our country, but not really. Ronald Reagan was motivated to support possible statehood for Puerto Rico, in part because our communist enemies were at the time exploiting Puerto Rico's status to sow unrest in Latin America by calling for an end to, quote, Yankee imperialism. While the Soviet Union may no longer be with us, Hugo Chavez is attempting to sow the same unrest, calling for an end to U.S. imperialism in Puerto Rico. Reagan said back in 1980 that we must be ready to demonstrate that the American idea can work in Puerto Rico. Reminded that the great experiment begun by our founding fathers is not in its last days, but instead is being constantly renewed as we work to expand what it means to live in a land of opportunity. Our best export has always been our ideas. And first and foremost amongst those ideas is the promise that limited government based on the consent of the governed, that respects the inalienable rights granted by God, is the best hope for mankind on earth. These ideas have also served as a magnet, drawing all those who wish for a better life to our shores. The citizens of Puerto Rico share in this American inheritance. They share in our values and in their belief in the American dream. The citizens of Puerto Rico deserve the opportunity to speak to their aspirations for the future in a sanctioned plebiscite. If I were drafting this bill, Mr. Chairman, I would draft it differently. And while this legislation is far from perfect, I am motivated at the end of the day to support it by the belief that America's promise is not finite in terms of space or time.
It is absolutely historically factual that the Congress decides.
Let us give an honest up or down vote to the people of Puerto Rico, who for 112 years have perceived themselves as a colony. Puerto Rico asked for statehood. Your Republican governor asked for a vote for this bill and against this motion to recommit. I ask my party to do the same. Give Puerto Rico its chance today.